And I am really thrilled that we came across Sebastian when we were looking for edgy, international, intriguing filmmakers. As you guys have already probably been to the panel prior, so you've already got a little bit of an idea about what kind of person he is. But I have absolutely loved watching his back catalogue of films and television that he's made, and I just wish I'd come across his work sooner, to be honest. He's something of a filmmaking wonderkind with a total of 6 features and a TV series under his belt, although he's still only in his 30s. His work includes The Maid, Nasty Baby, Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus, Magic, Old Cats, and The Boring Life of Jacqueline. Often hilarious, always insightful, honest, and brave. Sebastian's work is not only brilliant, but secretly it's actually quite addictive. I'm pretty much hooked. So, a director who is seemingly never bogged down with the politics and logistical complications of filmmaking. He is inventive, surprising, and bold. And I can't wait to see what he comes up with next. So please welcome the spirited, warm, and charming Sebastian Silva.
So even though I feel that the ice is kind of broken already, I had prepared a first video to break the ice, and I'm going to play it anyway. Usually people ask you, like in interviews and stuff, like, what's your favorite director? What are you watching lately? And I'm always confused by that question. I try to sound smart or like think of like a really classy director to bring about. And the truth is that what I've been watching the most lately is the video that I'm going to share. Don't judge me. We can talk about it later. I'm going to just say like the things that I really love. I really like the score. The score of this little video is just, it couldn't been a better song for it. I'm so impressed, and everything feels like it was an accident. And also the lead character. So let's play the video. It's the lady, skydiving lady. If you've watched it, it's a YouTube video. If you watch it, please don't share the ending with the person sitting next to you. Can we?
Oh my God! Let me get my clothes.
I got you. Okay. I wish I made that video. I had nothing to do with it. I was shown this video like 2 years ago, and I can't stop watching it. It's everything about it. It's like the music, you notice, right? It's incredible. It's just one song, and how it's set up. Like it's such a tiny little short story, and it has everything you need. It's a character with this, like, celebrating her 80th birthday. His expectations are so huge. She brought her family. Then you see her putting the things on. The plane is like, the editing is perfect. And then what happens? I mean, she's pushed out of a plane. She's 80 years old. And then she survived. I mean, this is like really my favorite movie ever. Anyway, so that the ice, I guess, I hope is broken by that video. I named this chat like Sell Yourself. I don't know why. It sounded like I would attract a lot of people, and it seemed that it worked. It is something that I think I've been doing, but not consciously, you know. And like when I say sell yourself, I mean 2 things. Oh, before I start rambling, I want to invite you guys to like raise your hands whenever you feel like it. It's not. I don't want to open to question by the very end. So if there's a doubt or like you want to participate by adding something, just like speak up, interrupt me, whatever. But let's make this a dialogue, okay? So. Selling yourself means, to me in the first place, it's like sell yourself to yourself. Like, what is it that you think you have to say, or like learn what are the things that make you truly passionate, you know? Because embarking into a project like even a short film, it's like it's so much time, and a feature film is just beyond like, it could be 3 years, sometimes 10, 12 years, you know? It just takes so long, and it's so much effort to put on it that I feel that it's very important to make sure that you really love what you're doing and that you did not start something with the wrong foot. Like, meaning you're like, I'm gonna make the most fucking amazing mafia movie. And you're like, you had no idea about mafia. You have no clue how mafia works. And you just watch like a fun Scorsese movie, and then you want to like do something like that. And that's your motivation to make a short film or a movie. It's probably not gonna be a pleasant experience, you know, because you're forcing yourself into something that you don't know, that maybe you don't love enough to be coping with for such a long period of time. So I think that you need to really get to know yourself, and now it's going to get kind of self-helpy, this chat, because it's really about knowing what your interests are and what's your nature as a director or as a writer. Not what you've heard, not what they taught you in school, not based on experience by other filmmakers, is really like your true self. What is it that is the best sort of comfort zone for you? Like, let's say writing, right? Like, what is the best writing experience? Are you good at coming up with structures? Are you better? Do you feel more comfortable maybe adapting something? Do you have ADD? So can you sit in front of a computer by yourself for like 5 hours a day and like get stuff done? Or is it better to maybe have somebody in the room with you that you can share your ideas, because you're more of a talky person and you cannot sit still for like 5 hours. So it's better to have somebody to share your ideas, and then that's the person typing, and then you can switch, and then you type for that person who also has ADD, right? So basically it's like finding out what is the best way to work and what are the things that interest you the most, so you can be passionate on a long run, you know? Like, I'm a very spoiled filmmaker because I don't read other people materials, rarely. I have agents and stuff, and they offer me to read screenplays, and I don't, because for the same reason, like, filmmaking is such a long process and is so committed and so involved that I could never be involved in a project about a serial killer that I have no fucking idea about. Like, you're like casting for a serial killer, you're dealing with a serial killer for years and like editing, and you see this blood, and it has nothing to do with you, but like if you pick something that really concerned you, like for instance, my first film was, it's called Life Kills Me, La Vida Me Mata, and by age 26 I was like completely obsessed with the death phenomenon, right? I was like, what happens when you die? Like, as if I was the only person that had thought that, right? I'm like, yeah, I have a question. But I truly became very intrigued, and like I felt that the more I thought about death, the more ready I was to die, or something like that. So it felt like it was a subject matter that I could be involved with for a long period of time, and it was gonna help my spirit, and just like made me a better human, you know, just to be involved, like, because it is so long, again, that you want to make sure that every part of the process is helping you grow somehow. So that was my first experience. It was sort of like a philosophical need that I had, and I wrote a screenplay that it was basically an essay. I'm sorry, this screen is like blocking me from, I'm gonna stand here. So it was like a death essay, and I wrote a screenplay in a way that I was addressing every aspect of death, or that I thought that I would. So it was like suicide and Ouija board and doctors and morgue and funerals and rituals. Like, so I made a list of everything that I could relate to death, and I got to read a lot of like books about essays about on suicide, or like spiritism, and et cetera, et cetera. And it was a really, really fun ride, and the movie came out great, and it felt very legit, and it felt like an honest movie. It didn't go anywhere, like it didn't go to festivals. It did good in Chile, but in a very small circuit, like 8,000 people watched it, that was it. But it was very rewarding because it was something that I did for myself. And then going back to sell yourself, everything for yourself, like, I don't regret that experience. On the contrary, like, it made me grow, and like I still have so much affection for that movie because it was not a wannabe movie, which I'm basically completely against with. Like the one of me was like, I want to make something like Scorsese, or I want to make something like Enter the Void. I want to be the new Gaspar Noé, or like, whenever you're trying to be something that you're not, I think you're bound for failure, unless you're a really good con artist. And then the second movie is similar. Then this goes more to like sell yourself, not sell yourself to yourself. It was about, it's called The Maid, and it's about a live-in maid that worked at my parents' house as I was growing up. And I didn't know what I was going to do after life kills me, but I didn't know I wanted to make movies in the first place, right? I was just writing screenplays for the fun of it, because I feel that narration is such a hard art. And I've been painting and making music, but narration was something that, storytelling more likely, that I felt like I was not good at, or I had never given it a try, and it feels like the most ancient form of expression, and I felt that I needed to try. So I was just writing for the sake of writing. And then anyway, Life Kills Me was like the third screenplay that I've written, and I was encouraged to make it into a movie. And then after that experience, I fell in love with directing, and being on set and all the collaborative aspects of filmmaking. So the second movie, it was proposed by my sister's boyfriend. She's like, why don't you make a movie about Janet? Janet was the maid that worked at my parents. Like, her story is so interesting, and how this other maid that came into the house changed her life perspective so drastically after so many years. And I'm like, that sounds great, and it's something that I know about, and it's something that I've always been somehow conflicted with, like growing up with a living maid. Like, it's a stranger in your house, like she's there all the time, but then she doesn't sit with you at the table, This is common in South America, like everybody has, maids have maids. Everybody has maids. It's like, don't ask me for money when we walk out. It's a common thing. But anyway, so I started writing about it, and then I found myself again so involved in a project that was so personal. I was like exercising these strange demons of having grown with a person that I never really got to know. And she was there more than my mom and more than my brothers. I spent more time with her than possibly anybody in my family, same as every one of my siblings, But I didn't know her. I knew her so superficially that it felt like a great project to delve into, and I knew every character of that movie perfectly. Like, I mastered the subject of that movie, which is what I encourage to anybody who's starting to write or starting to make movies, is to like make sure that you are the person that knows most about the subject you're talking about. And I know a lot about my family, I know how they move around a house. I know what time they wake up. I know how they treat each other when they're in certain moods, etc., etc. So the writing, it's so easy. It's so real. I found myself crying and laughing while writing, which I believe it's key for good writing, is when you feel emotional with your own writing. When you're like, I'm going to write the most dramatic scene, and this is your face. Like, that's not going to work. Like, you need to be going through the motions. Like, you need to gasp and feel sad and like maybe laugh out loud. But I remember, like, while writing this movie, when I got to the end, I found myself crying. And I'm like, this is going to work. Like, there's no way this is not going to work. If I read it, I know the ending, and I'm still crying with the ending. This has to work. And it was, again, a great experience. I used everything I had. I shot it at my parents' house during the summer, so nobody was there. So I had a free location. It was a very contained sort of situation where the maid, it's a living maid. So basically everything happened inside the house, which helped. And we shot this movie in 2 weeks. We had a full-on screenplay. And it was so organic. Like, first knowing the location, it was the house that I grew up on. And I knew how everybody moved around. So I was not inventing. I was actually avoiding creativity. I was avoiding invention. I was I was using my characters, and of course I was directing, and I was making sure that things like sound legit and honest, but I was really trying to push away from being creative and like just trying to portray my life experience and the life of these people that I knew so well as best as I could. And of course I made it into a fun story to watch, you know. It's not that because it's real, it's good. That's not a fact. And also, I feel that in film, reality is things feel more like a morning, like somebody waking up in the morning. Like that could take like 20 minutes for somebody to wake up. You're not going to show 20 minutes of my mom just like, you know? But then, so you're speeding things up, and then things even look more real. I don't know. I don't know what I just said. It makes no sense. Can we delete that, Dean? Delete that. What I'm saying is that, again, that was a movie that I had no ambitions. I'm like, I'm going to make a very tiny movie. It was $200,000. I shot it at my parents' house in 2 weeks of a story that I knew very well. And it was really fun to shoot. I had never... Like that, I don't come from a filmmaking background. I didn't study film, and I worked with a DP that had made only 2 movies before, and the way I talked to him, I was like, I want the camera to move like a 12-year-old is holding it. Like, just be really honest. Like, don't make beauty shots. Just like go where the action is going. Like, if it's a 12-year-old was holding a camera, then he would go where the action is. You know, he would not stay on top of like a glass of milk on the table just because it looks cool or because it looks artistic. Like, just go fucking to the face of the woman that's crying, you know? So we shot this movie, and then surprisingly this movie won Sundance, and then it went to the Golden Globes, and it was like such a big unexpected surprise. And I think that was my, it was so reassuring. To be writing about things that I knew. And since then, that's pretty much all I've done. I make sure that my movies contain either subject matter that I'm truly passionate about, like death. Right. And then another film that, oh yeah, please. Yeah, good question. So Jeanette, so the story was basically, I don't know who's seen The Maid here, anybody know? Right, 2 people, great. No. So the story is basically about a living maid that's been in this upper middle class Catholic family, very conservative. She's been there for 20 years, right? And then she's getting these crazy headaches, and then the mother of the family decides to bring in new maids to help her. But she's very territorial, right? She doesn't want anybody there like sharing this family with her, but she needs the help. So she starts psychologically torturing every other maid that comes into the house, right? So I think, I don't know who was like at the previous talk, there was like a little scene of a maid hiding a cat inside a drawer. That's Jeanette. So anyway, yeah, back to your question. I did not talk to her so much about this movie. Anyway, so the story is like that she is fighting all of these maids that try to help her until one maid comes and she fights her the most, right? Like she pours bleach on the bathtub every time she takes a shower, and then she locks her outside. She does crazy shit to her, right? But she copes with her, and instead of being confrontational, this maid, whose name in the movie is Lucy, she embraces this woman's sort of attacks as insecurity and like just a clumsy need for affection, and a beg for affection. And that actually happened, right? So that's why there was such a beautiful story that it could be told. And then I did most of the research with Lucy, right? So Lucy was there during the summer, and I'm like, okay, what did she do to you? So I found out about a lot of things, and I knew a lot of backstory from Jeanette because I grew up with her, you know? But I had been living in the States for a long time, and I came visit family, and this was the situation at my parents' house. So I wrote the screenplay using Lucy kind of not as a co-writer, as a creative consultant, right? And then when I finally made the movie, it was very risky, to be honest, because I was portraying somebody's, it's not a comedy, even though it's funny at times. It's not a comedy, it's a drama. And I was portraying somebody's life, and it was a sad portrayal, you know? Even though it has a hopeful ending, it's a sad portrayal of a woman. And I was scared, you know? I was like, maybe she'll kill herself after this, and then I'll have to cope with that. But I honestly felt inside that my intentions were good, so I went for it. Because if I'm like, I'm gonna profit out of this bitch, like then probably things won't go well, you know? But my intentions were honest, and I felt like, okay, I feel that this could be helpful for her, for myself, for my family. And so when I had the first cut, I sat with Lucy. Yes?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but where did you get the $200,000 from?
Let me finish. No, I'll tell you. Oh. It was a friend of mine. Like I've tried to get money from the government in Chile, but my treatments are so bad. And I don't put much effort on writing treatments, or like I was the worst student ever, right? So for me to sit and be like, I don't know, like employees, mates in Chile, like I just don't know how to go about selling ideas to the government. I don't know how to do it, so I was rejected constantly. I was always rejected. So much rejection that I stopped trying. So it was somebody that like bargained his apartment for it. Like it was the older brother of a friend. Anyway, going back to the important stuff. No. No. But so anyway, I watched the movie with Janet and Lucy, the real maids, the first people that I showed the film, and Lucy was crying hysterically. She was like, oh my God, this is like changing my life. And then Janet was laughing. And I'm like, what is happening? And then I guess she was laughing because she was somehow in some kind of denial. She's like, this is not me. Like, I never did that. I'm like, no, it's a mix with fiction and reality. But I was truly nervous because if she honestly was like, I cannot believe you did this to me, like, I would have shut down the movie and then had to bargain my apartment that I didn't have and then pay back to my friend and like cancel the thing off. I would not ruin somebody's life just for a movie, right? But it happened that after 2 weeks, she quit. After 25 years, 23 years. And then she married, and now she sells exotic birds, and she dyed her hair, and then she's not longer part of a family that she doesn't belong to, but we are still in touch with her, but she became kind of a free woman after the experience. And it was not just because of the movie. I'm not like giving myself that much credit, but she happened to fall in love at the same time, and then she ended up, leaving the house. So back to my lecture, my masterclass. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel that really creating from within, it's very key. I'm going to talk now about because I know that collaboration, it's kind of a theme in this symposium, and I completely agree. And I was a painter before I started making movies, and I still paint a lot, but it's a very lonely endeavor, and I really like being around people. And filmmaking made me believe that you are, if you're a director, made me believe that you are collaborating a lot, but you are not, right? Because you luckily make a movie every 2 years. So what the fuck are you doing during those, like, year and a half? You're alone in your apartment sending emails and hoping that your movie would get produced, right? So, so writing with people, for me, it's really key. And it's something that it took me a while to learn. And I think it was because of my big ego, you know, that it's like, this is my movie, written and directed by. Like, who really cares? Like, I mean, you learn that the best, like, you need to do the best for the movie and not for yourself. And sometimes I feel that if you are smart, you probably have smart friends. And then, and you can always find, like, people to become a bouncing board or somebody that can chip in ideas, or even do the thing that I was saying in the beginning, just like writing as you speak out loud, whatever it is. But I learned that the process is so much more fun. Yeah, maybe you'll get a few less dollars when the script deal comes, you know, because you have to split it in two. But that only happened once. Like, you only sell a script like every 2 years, and then you make the movie, and then you made a little money, you know. But like, the process is so much important that now I cannot find myself writing alone anymore. It's not worth it. I don't have fun. I feel that also ideas are a little more, not stale, but there's something about talking to somebody. I was telling you yesterday that when you speak out your ideas, you're forced to make sense immediately. You need to be making sense as you speak, right? Whether when you're thinking, thoughts don't work as speech. So things, did you raise up your hands or just, no, you didn't. Oh, it just went like that. So I feel that I like truly see how you write when you sit in front of a computer and then you start writing. When you're stuck, because sometimes you have ideas fresh and then you're just writing. But when you get stuck and then you're like stuck with a dialogue or with an action or something, the thought process is like, at least for me, it's so clustered with other things, and you're like, I suck at this. What am I fucking doing this? Oh yeah, like Lucy, I suck. Lucy, I suck. So the thought process, imagine if that was what you were saying. Your partner would be like, what? What are you saying? But when you're talking, you're forced to make sense. So you're doing the job so much faster. You really, truly are you're working so much faster. Dialogues even, you know? If you have to write dialogues and you can speak them out loud, they come about so easily. I've learned that, like, really in the last 3 years, and I've been doing this for like 10, but I've just learned that speaking out dialogues in front of somebody that you share a common sense or a sense of humor with, you will be forced to be funny, or you will be forced to be genuine, you know? So it's just a way more practical way, and I don't like being alone so much. Like in a room writing your sad screenplays. It's like life is too short. Life is too short. Do we have any questions? Because if not, I'm going to show another clip.
Sorry, I want to persist with this. Most people, a lot of people here, I think, do not have access to $200,000.
Oh my God. No, yeah.
I want to know how you sold that idea for that script to the person who gave it to you.
Yeah. Look, I got really lucky with my first screenplay because I had only made music and I made a couple of like paintings, exhibits, wherever, but people knew me a little in Santiago, right, culturally. And so I wrote this screenplay that I told you guys about the death phenomenon, right? And then somebody encouraged me to go and shop it around, like show it to people. So I went to a couple production house, and the first people that I'd show it to, they're like, oh, we would like to do this. So I had really a lot of luck. That's really how it happened. And then they financed my first movie. It was $450,000. And I was like, yeah, thank you guys. Let's hope it works. And then it worked, you know, and it didn't do that well. I mean, again, it did well in Chile, but it didn't travel. No festivals, no international fancy festivals. We did not recoup the money, you know. But whatever, it was an investment by like an old rich widow that they knew. And then that's where you get your money. Rich widows. No, but the money, I have to say that I feel that filmmaking more than any other, not any other, but I feel that it's very democratic, and I think that people are just looking for good stories, and this is the truth. Like, I feel that it doesn't matter what you've done or who you are or who you have contact with. If you've written a good story and you send it to places, people read it eventually, or people hear about it, or even telling a story. Like, if your story is that good, then go approach somebody and be like, listen to the story. And then if you tell the story and you captivate the person that you're talking to, they'll be like, come to my office. Like, do you have something written in paper, you know? So I feel that writing is the most self-sufficient possible thing to do. You know, you only need your fingers and your mind, and possibly a computer at some point. But yeah, I mean, like that's really it's all it takes. It's a good screenplay or like a story that feels original enough for somebody to give you the money, you know. And again, my first movie, as I said, it was like I was not forcing myself to use things that I had, which was The Maid was different. My second movie was like twice as cheap as my first movie. It's not because like also in Hollywood, or I feel that the industry in general is like, once you've made a movie, then the next one has to be bigger, and then the next one bigger, which is a total fallacy. And it's the most childish way to look at an art. It just makes no sense to me. So, but the second movie, I was like, okay, I'm gonna use my house. That's a cheap location. That's a free location, you know? And we just like cut short and like so much money. I don't ever use art directors. I try to use locations that are already dressed. I don't want to go and then like put like a cool like how do you a wall mural like paper what wallpaper, yeah. Like I don't want to dress up a room and put cute things and cute funny lamps or paint it like bright green, you know. Like I feel that I try to find locations that are already dressed, people that have locations that I can use. I don't do wardrobe either. I never buy clothes for my films. I don't do makeup. You know, I don't do lighting. I don't use lights for my films. So there is a way to make films so cheap. You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and then he told me that like the average sort of budget for a New Zealand indie movie was like up to $2 million. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, my movies like go up to like 500,000 at the most, you know, and that's big budget sometimes for me, you know. Like I feel that there's so many rules that production or like all ways of making movies have like brainwashed us with. Like there's so many directors, like the best directors of photography out there. Not the best, I mean, there are different types, but there's so many like A-list DPs that don't use lighting, artificial lighting. They don't use lighting at all. And then you can save so much money without lighting. And makeup also. Who wants to see the makeup? Like, when did sweat become such a, or like shiny people became such a terrible thing? You guys are all shining from here. All of your foreheads are shining. You know? So it's just a matter of going around in a smart way and saving money and not sort of clinging to the old ways of making movies and really see what you need to make a movie. If your movie, it's a horror film, that it's a super atmospheric movie that you need smoke and you need like crazy lighting, then yeah, fight for that, you know, and like maybe, cut costs and somewhere else. But if your movie, like my movies again, are really about stories that I've gone through or people that I know, you know, and it's personal stories that I usually just need those people and a place to shoot it, and that's it. Yeah.
I'm interested, like this movie about death. What was the process for, you know, you said you talked about thinking about death in many different ways and sort of getting maybe different theories or, you know, being interested in researching it. How did that then go from being those theories into the story, or did the story
Right.
Right.
You find a vessel for those subjects, right? And then that will be a person, of course. And then that character, in this case, was somebody that was going through a loss. He had lost his brother, and he was trying to commit suicide. So he had already been through a loss, so that related to death. He was trying to kill himself, so that was relating to death as well. And his grandfather that lived with him in the same house was dying. So I used this one character and I created like death-related things around him so he had to deal with them. So, and then his sister was a doctor, you know, so then I related that to disease and like a hospital with a morgue. And so you just make sure that all of those things, you put them organically around this one character. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about you collaborate now all the time. How do you choose people? Or is it just, again, an organic thing of talking to people that you know? Or?
Right. For instance, like things like personal stories. Whenever I have an idea for a movie, I share it from the very beginning. I'm not the kind of director or artist that keeps things for themselves, you know, because there's so many directors that are extremely secretive about their projects. You're like, yeah, what are you? You're like, no, 2 more years, we'll see. You're like, what? Just tell, like, we're having a beer. Like, how can you? For me, the more I talk about it, the better the story becomes, just because I use people to improve my stories. You know, I bore them in bars. Whenever the story it's in a very raw state, I'm like, you want to hear a good story? You buy them a drink, and then you're like, so, and then you start like, just like, pitching a story that is not really formed. It's not truly formed yet. And then you can tell in their eyes when they're bored. You can tell when, and then you like tell them that somebody dies. They're like, oh wait, what? And then you're like, oh yeah, somebody needs to die. You know? But so for stories that are personal like that, I just share them a lot. Share them a lot, send drafts, ask a lot. Share as much as you can. That's what I do. I share my stories as much as I can, and then I usually write them myself, and then I invite people to rewrite them with me, like somebody that gives me notes, like somebody that you really trust their like narrative skills, you know? Because the truth, I hope it's already there because it's something that I know more than this person, you know? Like when I was writing about the maid, you know? When I was writing The Maid, I brought my sister, you know? I brought my sister and I'm like, I want to write a movie about Janet, like, help me, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? And we wrote a treatment. And then I wrote a screenplay myself out of that treatment, which I'll talk later if we have time about treatments and screenplay and going from treatment to screenplay. That is like the most magical thing ever. But so, and then once I had the screenplay, I talked to a friend of mine that it's a genius writer. Like it's somebody that reads. I don't read. I read very little. And I'm not a cinephile either, you know. So I go to people that are actually smart. So I go up to smart people, and then I show them my screenplay, and then I see how they feel about it. And then I remember him like helping me with motivation. Like he's like, no, the motivation is not clear. I'm like, oh, what do you mean motivation? Okay, motivation. And then like, and then you'd like, I would fix it after showing it to somebody that knows storytelling in a more sort of academic way, right? And then you mix the both, and then, but for something that it's bigger than me, for instance, like it had never happened to me, like that I felt that a story that I had thought of, I was not the person to write the story that I thought of. It was too big. I couldn't deal with it. I knew the philosophy behind it, and I knew the atmosphere that I wanted for the movie, but the story became too big. So I talked to an agent, and I asked him I thought I needed a playwright instead of a screenwriter, just because it was a story that I felt that it was very, very much like a play. It was very expository and a lot of dialogue, and I wanted to separate it in like different stages, like phases, like 4 different. So I'm like, a playwright would make total sense. And so I reached out to my agent, and then they put me in touch with a playwright, and I read all of his stuff, and I liked it a lot. And that was a collaboration that started from an agent linking us up that I had never done before. But it happened that the story became too big for him as well. So we're still searching for people. Now I kind of want to like, now what I'm trying to do with this story is to get money for development so I can hire a bunch of writers, not only, so we're like a team of 8 people, like, okay, let's figure this out. Like, this is what I want, this is what we have, how do we make this work? So I feel that instead of 2 people, I need 6 people, and I need to pay them, so it's not a favor. That's how I'm going to go about this one specific collaboration. Yes?
I'd like you to talk about what you just said you were going to talk about, the jump from treatment to...
Oh, okay. I mean, this is just a very practical thing that because I didn't go to film school, right? And then I heard about this book written by Seinfeld. I don't know if you're familiar with. It's called Screenwriting. That's the name of the book. And it's like plot one. It happens like 10 minutes into the story. Like you need to catch people's attention at 10 minutes, like not after, right? And I'm like, okay, good. Then the second plot has to come at 30 minutes, right? That's when the second plot has to be there. Somebody's pregnant, somebody's got a really bad disease or something. So, yeah, you found a dead body or something. And then the second plot comes at minute 60. That's the third one. And then the last one and the resolution at 90, right? So that's how I learned how to write in the beginning. And then I watched this movie, this Lars von Trier movie called Epidemic, where you see von Trier writing a screenplay with a group of friends. And the way they did it in that movie is that they put like a huge piece of paper on a wall, right? And then they draw a line from A to B. And that's the movie. And then so they divide that line into, I mixed Lars von Trier with Seinfeld, which von Trier would be really upset about. But basically, I was like, so I have this big line in front of my eyes, right? And so I marked the 10 minute, I marked the 30, I marked the 60 and the 90, and then the end, right? And then I try to squeeze a story into that timeline. And then once, I never start writing something if I don't have an ending. That's key for me. Like, if I don't know the ending, I don't start. Because you usually end up in page 47 like, fuck, no, delete all. Because if you don't have an ending, unless you're a very special person, it probably won't work. Like, so for me, having an ending it's key. So if I don't have an ending, I don't start. When I have an ending, I start, and I do this, and I create all the beats, and then I write the story. The treatment, basically, what I learned from this book, I think, too, is that a treatment is basically you telling a story in a bar to friends. Usually, a good story takes you, if it's a good story, it takes you like 15 minutes to tell somebody a good story, whatever, 10 minutes. So I made sure that the treatment was that. It was like me telling the story, sometimes writing dialogues in it, maybe not, but just like the story. And like every character, and then until the end. It usually, for why Seinfeld says, it's like usually a treatment for a feature film. Each page, it's 10 pages of a screenplay, right? And it's truly a miracle how that works. It's incredible. The first time I did it, I was like, oh my God, I'm having a screenplay. And I was just basically translating my treatment into a screenplay on Final Draft, and it became a 90-minute screenplay. But I was not trying to. I was just following this treatment, you know? So it really works perfectly like that way. And with this one project that I haven't been able to crack, is the only project that I haven't write a treatment for. And I'm so lost. And it was because I don't know really what the treatment would be like, you know? But if I had a treatment of the story, the screenplay would just be so easy. I'm gonna show a clip, just going back to you. Yeah.
Very quickly, going back to when you're collaborating now, screenwriting and you're jamming and you're talking dialogue and story. Is somebody transcribing at the same time, or are you recording what you're saying, or do you stop and break and write it down?
Right. I just started, like, honestly, a month and a half ago writing with an assistant, like a paid assistant. I've never paid an assistant before. And it really changed my view on writing. I speak out loud, I move around, I tell her to delete things, I act out dialogues, and she's writing compulsively, you know, and then we take a break and we read together. She cleans it up a little bit, right? And then we read it together, and then I delete things, whatever felt redundant or like that it was a good idea at that moment, but it actually didn't have anything to do with we were trying to achieve. We delete and so on. But I feel that in one day I got done what I hadn't done in like 3 months, truly, by myself. It is really incredible. And it sucks because good assistants charge money, you know. But I feel that But again, like if like now most of my friends that are directing, they're too busy directing or too busy with their projects, so it's hard to bring them into a room with you to do that job. But like, I wish like 10 years ago I knew this and I would have done it with my friends that were also writing and like just take turns. You know, it's like, okay, today's your day. We worry about your screenplay. You walk around, pace like crazy, smoke a joint, just go insane, just tell me whatever you want, and then I'll write it, and then we'll look at it. And then the next day, it's the other person's turn. And then it's great because you take a break from your story, and then you care about somebody else's story, and it's not just ego-based stuff, but you're like actually caring about storytelling overall. And it's not your own storytelling, but this other person's storytelling. Yes?
So have you helped other people with their stories like they've helped?
Yes, I have, yeah. And it's really a great place to be. You feel like you come up with great ideas because you don't feel the weight of the ideas. You know, the ideas can be like they can take them or leave them. So whatever you speak out your mouth, your mind so freely. It is really a great process, and I highly recommend it to people that have friends that are doing the same to get together and do that and switch every day, and you'll get stuff done so much quicker. Yeah, let's watch. So going back to selling yourself, the name of the talk. There was like this, there's like, I try to work on 6 or 7 things at the same time. I'm never only pushing for one project because this is a very cruel industry, and sometimes maybe your project is great, but it's not the right time for it. Just people are not looking for that. Maybe in 3 more years, there would be somebody looking for that project, and then it would be perfect. But it's great to have more things going at once, you know, because people are looking for different things. And I feel that it can get very frustrating when you start pushing for one thing to get made, and then it doesn't work, and then you start becoming insecure that you're not good for this, but then like just move to the next idea and then let that, like keep on sending that one away to people and like showing it around, but start working on something else. Like I feel that my life's become so much more enjoyable now that there's like 5 or 6 things going at the same time. And I'm not telling you that there's like producers interested. It's just my own stuff, you know? But it makes it so much fresh. And like, I'm saying this because a long time ago, like 16 years ago, I was invited to create like a weird performance, to come up with a performance piece for a dance week. This is so random. In Chile, right? So they're like, because I really like dancing, right? So they're like, why don't you do a performance piece that is like only 5 minutes? And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. So I come up with this idea that it's me embodying a baby, like a real 3-month-old baby, right? In front of a crowd like this. And just like really, truly embarrassing myself in front of an audience with the purpose of like strengthening my spirit, right? In a way that if you go through such an embarrassment, you can only come out like stronger after that, right? And like, you're like just like more bold, you don't care, you don't give a shit, everybody saw you on a diaper, it's just, there's nothing to lose after embarrassment, right? So I proposed this, it was called Nasty Baby, and they're like, no. And I had rehearsed this with my family, they're like, please don't do that. With my friends, it's like, it's truly the most disgusting thing to witness and to do, and you start blushing as you do it. It's really, truly gross. Do it at home. It's great. Anyway, so going back to old ideas that nobody gave a shit about, this idea I used for my last movie, right? And it's like, the movie's called Nasty Baby, and I'm the lead actor in the movie. And then the movie is about Freddie, me, and his friend Polly, Kristen Wiig, and his boyfriend Tunde is like a singer from TV on the radio. It's a band based in Brooklyn. So these 3 friends are trying to have a baby, and Freddie is an artist, right? He's like a mediocre artist that is going to make a video that is called Nasty Baby, which is about him portraying a baby. right? And let's watch it. That's how that's how my movie begins. The movie is not, of course, centered on that lousy performance, but what I'm saying, it's an idea that was rejected 16 years ago, and I'm like, oh, damn it. And then I brought it back in a form of a film. Can we watch it, Dean? It's called Nasty Baby Opening. So you see, who knew that that ridiculous idea was going to be the opening of my latest movie? Yeah. No, that's just one camera. I've shot with 2 cameras in Magic and Nasty Baby. We had 2 red epics. And I have to say that sometimes it's great and sometimes it's really a pain in the ass to have 2 cameras. And like, you just get confused. You don't know what did you get from what camera. And a lot of times they would cross each other, so you need to choreograph the dance between the 2 cameras, which takes a long time. I don't usually do rehearsing. I don't rehearse the scene before I start shooting. So that became kind of a pain in the ass. But this one particular scene was like just 1 camera. Nasty Baby and also Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus in 2012. I've never said that title like that, but that's the real title. But those 2 movies which were shot with no screenplay, but more of an outline, which is something that I also highly recommend. Like when I was saying, like, you don't need makeup, you don't need lights. Sometimes you don't even need a screenplay. I mean, you need a story, but not necessarily a full-on screenplay with dialogues. Because if your movie it's about people that are like friends of yours or family or people that you know, you will know if, when you hear them, if they're speaking truly, you know. I mean, that is coming out authentically from their mouth, you know. And like Crystal Fairy and Nasty Baby were movies that only had like Crystal Fairy was 10 pages outline, and then Nasty Baby was 20. And the way I shot them, it was really, it was an epiphany to me as a director, because since it was not scripted, I was really the only one on set that knew exactly what I wanted, because there are like, don't get me wrong, like an unscripted movie is not like, oh, let's do whatever, action, and then you're like, fuck. It is really, you have a really solid story. As I said, I never go ever even to write something without an ending or without a purpose. Like, my stories always have a purpose, you know? So Crystal Fairy was about the birth of compassion, you know, and like, these were my characters that I was gonna use, and every scene that I wrote in that tiny outline was pretty fleshed out emotionally and philosophically. I know exactly how I want my characters to come into the scene and to leave the scene, and also how am I progressing the narration of my story with each scene, you know? But then dialogue, which we could spend so much time, there's so much time sometimes wasted on trying to not come up with good dialogue, when if you have smart actors and you recreate a moment or you recreate a scene where things will just fall into place, like just dialogue fall into place magically. And then you think that it's improvised, and the actors like Kristen Wiig, which is like the queen of improv, right? He was like, oh no, it's an unscripted movie, same as Gabby Hoffman and Michael Cera, that people that have worked a lot in films and television, they were terrified about unscripted outline, right? Or movie. And we found out how easy it is, because like, you know what they have to talk about, you just don't know the words. And you don't need to know them until you're there. And you tell them what to say, know how to say it, they say it, and so the first take usually goes really bad, you know, but there's like lights of something, you know, but usually goes like way longer, because you don't know what you're doing, they don't know how much they're supposed to say or how to say it. So then the second take goes a little better, and then the third take, you got it. And I promise you got it. Like, and then after the third take, you just repeat the third take, and then it becomes a scripted movie. Like, you just write your screenplay on set, which is terrifying to hear, but it's actually so much better. Like, there's jokes and dialogues in Nasty Baby and Crystal Fairy that I could have never come up with in a room by myself with my computer. Yeah.
Could you just workshop it first, or do you feel like you'd lose a lot of spontaneous process?
What's that?
Could you just workshop it with the actors first, and then have written script? Or do you lose something from that process?
No. I don't think you lose much. I feel whenever I get together with actors to talk about characters, we are like, okay, so Polly, yeah, she's a doctor, and she's like, so who are you dating? Like, and then we end up talking about something else. Like, it never's like, for me, I never audition actors. Like, it makes me so embarrassed to have somebody in a room and make him go through things that are impossible to be happening in that room. But that's me. Like, I'm not judging that process. That's what everyone does. But like, workshopping, we talk about it. We talk about the characters. We talk about the situation. Usually it's more like, how is Polly feeling about rejection again? Like, it's the third time that she doesn't get pregnant. How is she feeling? Is there, like, she would ask me, like, Kristen would be like, is there still hope there? Is she getting angry? Like, questions like that you solve with the actors, you know? Usually you can solve those things on set, because the good thing about being on set is like, you have the reality of what you thought in front of your eyes. So to be sticking to a screenplay that you wrote in a hot room 2 years ago, now that you have the chance to be in the real place that you imagine, you're betraying yourself, and you're cutting your choices short in a way, you know? Like, that's why these like two experiences of unscripted movies have opened my eyes to like spontaneity and how movies are so organic. Screenplays for me mean nothing. Like, unless it's like a Stanley Kubrick film or like a Bergman movie, it's like really philosophical, that every word means something, you know, it's full of hidden symbolism. But that is not the movies that I'm doing now. Maybe I will make a movie like that at some point, and that would have to be a very scripted movie. But these movies, like, you see things on set, and if you're open to them, you can improve your movie to a 300% on set. And I think it's really important to have that in mind and not stick to an old, stale screenplay. That's what I believe. Yes?
When you're filming without a script and you're using one camera and you've got dialogue overlapping, does that cause you any problems when you come to the cut?
With what?
When you get to the edit and the sound mix, do you get any challenges?
Of course, yeah. Yes. So you bring flowers to your editor and you apologize profusely. But you know what? It's not so different. Like, you use the slate. I found myself not even using the slate so much anymore in movies like this, you know. And like, when you're shooting digital, I shoot digital, you know. I've only made one movie in film, and it was a great experience. But I feel that for the movies that I'm making, or these smaller personal films, when you shoot digital, you're not wasting any money, so you can go as long as you want. And I learned that cutting, like just screaming like cut, just everybody goes on Tinder and people go crazy. Like, just people are like cut, and they're like eating and doing a whole bunch of things that distract them from the tension that had taken you so long to create, you know. So now I don't cut as much. And actors really are thankful about that, because actors hate waiting, and that's all they do, you know? They're always waiting to be called, and then they're called, and it's like, cut, retouch makeup or whatever, the curtain is falling, and then they're waiting. So whether when you have a scene, and then not to break the tension, you say, cut without cutting, or stop without cutting, camera keeps running, and I give directions with the camera just like I put it down, and it's rolling. And I'm like, no, now do this. I'm going to start in your face now. I'm going to start in your face. And then the script supervisor is like, oh my God, close-up. We're having a close-up. You know, and then you start in their face. And then you're like, oh, do that with your hands again. You mind? You interrupt them. You're like, can you just like play with your hands again? And you're like, yeah, do that. Now put them down. Oh, can you bring them back to your face? Because again, like like just like tiny little things that you learn doing things like this. Like, it doesn't matter if you're speaking. Like, sometimes you don't need silence to get those kind of things, those details, you know, because you're gonna have room noise, room sound, and that's so easy to do in the editing room, you know. And then you're not gonna write a new scene that is like close-up of hands touching, like, what a waste. But then you have the hands of the actor right there. Why not shoot them, you know? So I've learned to, for these unscripted movies, I found myself doing more camera, you know? In Nasty Baby, not so much because I was acting, but in Crystal Fairy, I found myself doing a lot of camera. And the amount of footage you get this way, without cutting, and without like the classical like, scene 1, scene 2, and like cut and takes, and like writing everything you do, you know? Like, you figure it out later. I feel that shooting time is so precious and so expensive, and to get everybody to come to the location and do the makeup and do everything that you have to do, it's such a hard thing to do that then it's better to shoot as much as you can. And I feel that cutting all the time and doing like little takes, it's not worth, especially with digital. That's my experience. Yeah.
I just got a question. I love the methodology, the sort of improvisational way that you took to the film. Did you have any trouble convincing financiers without a script?
Well, yes. I mean, I lucked out that because, for instance, this sucks to say this, but it is truth. It is the truth, and at least in North America, that when you get a name like Michael Cera, we were going to shoot Magic, right? Which is like a little bit of a bigger budget film that we were going to shoot in the south of Chile. Sony was producing, and Michael was like spending time in Chile, learning French, staying with my family, and the money didn't come through, and then so I flew there to show Michael some support. We're like, well, we have to wait, and then it felt like the money was never going to come. So I decided like, why don't we make this movie Crystal Fairy? And it was an experience that I had gone through. Like 15 years ago, I actually met a woman named Crystal Fairy, or that called herself that, and we went and took drugs in the desert, and it was like a really fun story about the birth of compassion in my mind, right? So I told Michael, I'm like, would you want to do this while we wait? And then he's like, yeah, sure. And then I went and talked to my producers friends that have produced my first film, Life Kills Me, right? And I'm like, guys, like, I'm waiting for money for another film, and I have this idea, and I sat with them, and I told them the idea. I made them laugh with the story, and it was like a pretty solid story. It was a road trip movie, you know. And road trips, again, as a tip, there are movies per se. Like, if you shoot a road trip, then you have a movie, because it's like from A to B, and then everything in between, like, you have a movie. So it already had such a movie structure, the story I was telling, that. And they got sold with Michael Cera, because if you make a $200,000 movie with Michael Cera, it's more likely you're going to make your money back, you know? So that helps. Like, bringing in talent helps. But it's something that I started doing on my fourth film, you know, not in my first film. Like, I had nobody. Like just Chilean, random people that were not even actors, you know? That's how I got my 3 movies made, just by convincing people and writing, and just trying to come up with good original stories. But it does help a lot to have a talent, of course, you know, and that's how we got those movies financed, and like, and non-scripted movies, you know. And also Nasty Baby, I had the example of Crystal Fairy, that I could pull off an unscripted movie, but it really is not. It doesn't require a special talent. I really truly believe that. I feel that movies would be so much better if people didn't write dialogue. It sounds weird, but because it's not that you don't know what they have to say. You know what they need to say, but not how to say it. And how to say it, it really depends on the actor you're bringing on set, you know? Like, I was telling my friend yesterday that in Nasty Baby, there was an actor that it's Freddie's boyfriend, right? And I had thought of a personality for this character that the actor could not deliver. So the actor could not deliver the personality that I had planned for him. But I was not going to force the actor to do that because it was going to be a total struggle, and it was going to come out so forced and artificial that I adapted the character to the actor's personality. So those are things that you are so much more welcoming when you don't have a scripted movie. Because maybe the dialogue that you had spent hours and hours written for this one character, then the actor cannot deliver those dialogues in a natural way. So then you find out the way to say those dialogues for the actor to be extremely comfortable and look like a reasonable, breathing human being, you know? I really highly recommend it. Of course, writing a screenplay, you will be more safe in case that you're feeling groggy that morning or in a bad mood, and then you just don't feel sharp enough. Then you can like relay on your dialogue that you've written or use it as a guide. So it's always better, I guess, to have more. But what I find tricky about scripted dialogue for naturalistic, small, independent movies is the constraint that they bring within and how they sort of like put these things in front of your eyes where you cannot see the infinite possibilities for characters and even locations at some points. I changed locations while shooting the movie, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you cast?
Yeah.
This whole process, and you go to audition, and you have a lot of your characters are based on real people you know.
Right.
How do you cast?
I'm really easygoing with casting, and maybe it's like a cocky attitude about like, I'll make anyone act good. Like, you know, like I feel that I'm so embarrassed with poor acting, or so highly embarrassed and uncomfortable with poor acting that I would never allow an actor to do something that I don't find believable. And it really depends on the nature of the film that you're making, because some movies are fables, you know, and so you don't need the actor to look like a real person. But anyway, going back to your question. I'm very easy, like for instance with, it's whoever wants to do it, kind of. Yeah, it's kind of that, like truly, like I'm really open. I'm not, like now that I'm in New York and I'm like, there's bigger projects, so I'm like, they're like, who do you want, Sean Penn? And I'm like, Sean Penn? What? You know, and you're like, yeah, sure, Sean Penn is great. And then you're like, yeah, but what about Alec Baldwin? I'm like, yeah, that too, like, yeah. And it's like people that are nothing alike. And I'm like, whoever wants to do it, I don't care. Whoever wants to do it, we'll work it out. Now we're like Will Ferrell. So any actor that wants to be part of it, he's welcome. That's really how I go about it, honestly. I try to, for me, it's huge that I don't feel that they're making me a favor. That's really key. Because especially when it's independent filmmaking, if you're working with people that have been in bigger movies, right? And then they come to your little tiny shitty movie that nobody will see, but only festival people or whatever, you know? And then so they feel so precious that then you won't be able to do your job right because you will be terrified to ask them to repeat things, you know, or take their shirt off if you wanted to, or change a scene, you know, because you just don't feel that this scene is working, so you just change it on set and you're like, do this instead. Like these big actors could like tell you to go fuck yourself, you know? They're like, you fucking inexperienced little shit, like, I'm not doing that, and they go to their trailer. What do you do? What do you do with imagine you have Sean Penn on a trailer. It's like the worst possible scenario. So I mean, going back to your question, it's really people that are grounded. I work with grounded people that have a sense of humor. And of course, there's going to be some times you clash with people. It's not that I'm against confrontation. I love confrontation, and it helps, and actors get tired, and they can tell you to go fuck off without being Sean Penn, you know? But again, it's like, it's people that are doing it because they want to do it, and not because it's what they got to, like, is the only thing they're being offered, or like, just, yeah, I have like 2 weeks off during this period, I'll do it, you know? So yeah, I really, about how I feel about them personally, more than anything else. Yeah.
With the two unscripted films, did you shoot them in story order?
Yes, that's very key. Sometimes you cannot do it, you know, because I mean, you will have to go back to like point A, you know, because if there is a flashback or who knows, you know. But it really helps. And if you're not going to do it that way, you just, like, your script supervisor is huge. I mean, in unscripted movies, our script supervisor, even though it sounds completely contradictory, it's huge. It's like really somebody that you need with you at all times, you know, because you improvise stuff that is not on that outline, and then you need to make sure that that's going to be brought back, or that if somebody got sunburned, you decided to get it sunburned, and then you need to go back to not being sunburned, etc. But yeah, you want to, even scripted movies, I tried as much as I can to do it in order. Yeah. Was that? All right. Any more questions? Because I want to end up with like a really creepy YouTube video. Yeah. Oh, okay. Has anybody watched that movie? Oh, 5 people, great. Okay, so this is a weird, like, so in Crystal Fairy, Michael Cera invites this woman who's played by Gaby Hoffmann that goes under the name of Crystal Fairy to go take mezcal into the desert with his friends, and he regrets it immediately. He's like, why did I invite this woman? Anyway, the woman shows up in the north of Chile, and then he's like, I cannot believe she's here. He's apologizing to his friends, and they go into a hostel together. And they're walking into a room, and Michael's character is really bummed out, and he's like, fuck. And like, he's the last one to come into the room. And then he looks at something that's sitting in front, on top of a TV set. And it's like, so we found this on the location. This was definitely not scripted. And it was like a Santa Claus little figure. Just like a really creepy Santa, like, he was wearing all white stuff with gold, like, things. And he's like just sitting there on the TV. And then I'm like, Michael, just like look at that thing for a long time. Like, just stare at it, you know? And so on this scene, he's like, he goes into, like, he's going into the room and he looks at the thing and then he stares at it. And then we stay with the Santa Claus for a long time, for no reason whatsoever. This is happening. And then he's looking at the Santa Claus, and the Santa Claus is like just getting a little bigger because we're zooming in slowly. And all of a sudden, like after 15 seconds of total silence, this like demon face comes out of nowhere. Well, I stole it from The Exorcist. It's like one frame of a demon like, ah! And then people jump in the theater. And then we never address that again, and then we move on. And then we move on to the next scene, and everybody's like, what the fuck? And then, but they get carried on with what's next so easily that they never even remember. Like, it's weird, it's odd that people actually ask about that. Well, anyway, thank you so much for being here. And before, well, can we watch Maria the Whisperer? This is about like finding stuff that you find highly amusing, like stuff that you want to share with a random audience like you guys. Like, I'm like, I want to share Maria the Whisperer with these guys. And Maria the Whisperer is like this woman on YouTube. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it's become some kind of an American fetish to have women whisper things to you. Like really quietly, and then people like guys get turned on by it, right? I'm not turned on by it, but I'm highly scared of Maria. And her whispering, and I found on her a very, like, so much potential for horror. Like, truly, I feel that the way that she plays her microphones in the room and in her clothes is just like, I'm like, how come there's no horror movie like this yet? Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Be patient with Maria the Whisperer. The video is like 30 minutes, so you're going to have to leave as she's talking. But it's a really epic ending. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Good evening. As you can tell by the title, this video is going to be dedicated to crinkle shirts. And I have 3 of them. So on the duration of this video, I would like to switch them. And I would love it if you would tell me which one you like the best. I also have my panorama